Yeah, I'm okay. Thanks, Damien. I'm just finished a couple of shifts there over the weekend, so just recovering before going back on nights tomorrow.
So I'm going to talk now to Laura. Laura Barry is from St John's Park, an intensive care specialist doctor at the Queen Elizabeth Hospital in Glasgow in Scotland. I spoke to her just before we came on air, and I asked her first how she was. Also, just before we do that, a special mention, we are going to have the Citizens Information Advice Bureau on tomorrow. We had some questions regarding tax matters with our tax consultant from MK Brazil yesterday. So we're going to have Mary on from the Citizens Advice Bureau. So if you have any questions, please, regarding social welfare payments, COVID payments, issues such as that, text us in 083 3333 975. Very specific questions, please, if you have them, and we'll see how we get on with that. And we will see also how many questions that you want to ring in to 051 846 123. Tom also phoned in to say the idea of pubs and hotels not reopening until 2021 has a huge knock-on effect. I'm in the chauffeur business, and without events like weddings and corporate, we don't have any work. We have 14 cars in our fleet, all that have to be maintained, insured, etc. It's not just the publicans that will lose out if they don't reopen. A publican from Carrick has texted, it's a family business. We've had our business since 1988. I think the government has totally let us down regarding insurance. Yesterday, our insurers took over €1,500 from our account for the monthly direct debit. We cannot sustain this as we've nothing coming in. I've emailed and asked them for some help or a break, but to no avail. The cost of business is crazy in Ireland. Another texter saying, if pubs are allowed to reopen, particularly rural pubs, it's going to be very difficult to maintain social distancing. For example, this person says many people in rural pubs like to sit around at a small table and play a game of cards while they're talking. This will not happen, I suppose, or social distancing will not happen if the pubs reopen. Another texter, Amanda, I can't understand how off licences are allowed to stay open and classed as an essential services. I have sympathy for the pubs and their staff. I want to say a special hello. Shirley's texted us in. Shirley Russell, can you please play a request for Ned O'Sullivan from Connolly Place? Himself and my mother Pauline have been self-isolating for the last few weeks. With a few words on Facebook, it's a tough few days after his brother passed away suddenly last week. Please tell him we, his children, grandchildren and great-grandchildren love them dearly and miss them for the cups of tea so much. We'll see you again soon. That is in from Shirley. So here's the little chat with Laura.
Yeah, I'm okay. Thanks, Damien. I'm just finished a couple of shifts there over the weekend, so just recovering before going back on nights tomorrow.
You're originally you're a St John's Park lady, Annette and Donal, your parents. Donal, Councillor Donal Barry, and Annette, your mammy. You moved back to Glasgow in 2005. You've been there since, and you trained as a doctor and then a specialist in anaesthetics. Tell me, what is it like there, Laura, at the minute? You've branched off into intensive care. What's it been like?
Well, as you said, I've been working in intensive care now for the past 2 years. And obviously since January, we were aware that this pandemic was coming our direction. And Glasgow, as you know, is quite densely populated. So we were expecting to have quite a number of patients come into our unit. So at the minute, we have probably quadrupled our work. We have a significant number of ventilated patients, which we would class as level 3 patients, and also a significant number of level 2 patients, which are patients requiring an intense amount of work but not necessarily needing a ventilator. It's busy. It's hard work. It's both physically and emotionally demanding. The days are long, and all the staff are pulling together and trying their best to get through this.
Do you have enough personal protection equipment, PPE, at present, Laura?
Yeah, I know this is something that we've seen in the news over and over again. And I feel very lucky. Where I am in Glasgow, we're in one of the biggest hospitals in the UK, in the Queen Elizabeth Hospital in Glasgow. And our training for this since January has been excellent. I really have to say that we are not short PPE. We have enough scrubs. We have enough of the visors that you see on TV. We have been fit tested appropriately for the mask. And every time I go into work, I feel very lucky that I'm in that situation, because daily we're hearing about hospitals up and down the country who are struggling to get the correct PPE. But thankfully, I'm not in that position, and we've been well looked after.
In terms of the practical and practicalities of this, just so that people can understand, when you put on this equipment, it takes you quite a while to put it on, because you have to be sure you're gowned up properly, and like simple little things like if you're in the PPE for an hour and you feel like you want to go to the toilet or you want to take a drink of water, what do you do then?
We have a plastic apron followed by a full-length gown. You then have 2 pairs of gloves on, which is difficult. It's difficult to do our job wearing 2 pairs of gloves. It requires an element of dexterity and skill. You need your hands all the time in intensive care, and wearing 2 pairs of gloves can be difficult. It's also quite hot, as you can imagine. On top of that, then, you have your mask, and the mask is exceptionally tight, and that's to make sure that there is a correct seal, that there's no particles escaping into that seal. And to do that, it's obviously very tight on your face. It's uncomfortable. It's hot. It sticks, into your skin. It cuts above your ears. It cuts on the bridge of your nose. And a lot of my colleagues, including myself, we've had, little dents appear on our noses, red marks on our faces, that we're now getting used to. But it's sore. It's not comfortable. And then on top of that, you have a visor which sits over your face. So all in all, it takes about 5 minutes to put on. And actually, the most important step is taking it off, because that's where you need to make sure that any virus particles that you may have been exposed to is taken off in a correct manner, and that you're ensuring that that goes directly and safely into a bin.
So like I said, if you need to take a break, what do you do? Do you have to literally take all that off, or do you try to... Do you? Yeah. How long can you actually last in that protective gear? Like 2 hours, 3 hours?
Well, I suppose, to give you an idea, I was working on Sunday. We had a very, very busy sick unit. There was a lot happening. There is obviously a varied skill mix on the floor just now with nursing staff and physio. The patients themselves are very demanding. And so taking a break is you can't just simply decide to leave. And I did a 13-hour shift on Sunday, and I left the unit twice in that period of time. I suppose there's 2 reasons. You don't actually have time to leave and go and eat or go to the bathroom or get a drink. You can't obviously break the seal of your mask when you're in the unit, so you can't drink when you're in the unit. And secondly, you're also quite conscious that you don't want to keep reusing the PPE, because every time you leave, you do have to take it off, and therefore that means you need to put on a full set of PPE again. So I suppose there's an element that people are conscious about doing that also.
How do you cope with the mental stress, Laura? Like, you're well trained, you're highly qualified, you work on certain procedures, and your colleagues you depend on them and they depend on you, and you work fabulously as a team. And yet, this virus is a hidden killer, and it's just beside you. It's just outside of this protective. You might remember the Ready Brek ad where you have this protective layer. Like it's there. Like how do you deal with that? Because you hear of your colleagues, other colleagues dying.
Yeah, I mean, as you said, in intensive care, we do see death. We do see it, but this is different. And there's no way that you can, just become immune to it, especially just now. We're seeing a high proportion, sadly, of people dying of this virus. And it's tough. It's tough as a team. But what I would say is in intensive care, we're privileged to work so well as a team. We have, a great bond between us with the nurses and the doctors, the physios. And I suppose we carry the weight of it all between us. I personally have found it very hard, as I'm sure all my colleagues have. And I'm sure that applies to anyone working in the environment just now. I suppose you just have to take solace in the fact that, in a way, we're privileged because there's families out there who haven't had the opportunity to see their loved ones at the very end. We have been there at the end. And I suppose most people, I'm sure many families will take a huge comfort in that, knowing that we care, that it's hard, that we do find it emotional, and, that their loved ones have been looked after at the very end. And there has been people who've cared deeply about them, who've been looking after them for many days. And, anything that the families want to pass on, we have done. We've spoken to the patients. We've held their hands. The nurses have been absolutely amazing, as have the medical team. And I suppose that's the only way that I can look at it. We're privileged. We're privileged that, although it's very difficult, we are in that fortunate position that we can give comfort to families.
It's so sad, Laura, isn't it? Like that you're there holding somebody's hand when he or she just takes their last breath.
Yeah, it is sad. And, I think in a way, when I leave work and I walk outside, and as the weather in Waterford is beautiful, it's beautiful here too, and you walk outside and it's so still. It's peaceful, the roads are quiet. And I can understand why the public or people who are not in that environment think, we need to get back to normal. The economy is suffering, which it is. But it's like a different world. It's like a different world. You walk outside and there's this air of stillness. And whilst the intensive care unit is very calm, there is a huge amount of sadness, and a lot of people working very, very, very hard night and day just now to try and get through this.
How do you cope with the worry that your relatives would have, that Mammy and Daddy would be on the phone to you and they'd be saying, and they'd be maybe more worried than you are because you know what you're doing to keep yourself safe. How do you deal with that on the phone?
Yeah, someone asked this during the week. Somebody was saying, do not worry about it. And I think I worry more that I would pass the virus on to somebody rather than myself getting it. And I know that sounds bizarre, but I suppose the way I look at it is, in intensive care, we're very well protected. We have been fortunate. And we are on, we hear the word frontline all the time, but in intensive care we are. We are surrounded by patients with, coronavirus. But we have to have belief that the PPE works and that we have been correctly fitted. And I just have to, assure them that I'm safe, I'm being well looked after, I'm eating well, trying to sleep when I'm off and getting plenty of rest. And that's it, really. There's not really, we're all equally exposed to this. And I suppose we just have to take the same precautions that everybody else does.
How are you doing?
I'm tired. I'm exhausted, actually, the last 2 days in particular. I was on for the weekend and it was busy. It was very, very, very busy. I'm sure you've seen on TV.
The insights in Britain, the BBC News and Channel 4 and ITV. Like, it takes 8 people to turn a patient over from his front or her front onto their back and things like that, or the other way around. Like, it's phenomenal.
Yeah, and over the weekend we had a number of patients who, what you just described is called proning. And that in itself, as you just said, takes 8 people. And it's not simply a quick turn. As you know, it has to be done very carefully. And then sometimes the patient doesn't quite like being turned, and then you have to do a quick flip back onto their front again. And that can be very stressful, especially when patients are critically unwell. So the weekend, I feel absolutely dehydrated today. I've been trying to drink plenty of water over the last 2 days and try and get some rest and some fresh air. And our rota has changed dramatically. We're doing a 2-on, 2-off rota. So that's pretty demanding, 13-hour days. And then, 2 days off. And then we're going from days to nights to days to nights constantly. And unfortunately, I'm imagining that's going to go on until June or July.
Say a little hello to everybody here.
Well, I'm sure that they're all listening at home in Waterford and enjoying the sunshine. So I'm very, very jealous. I keep getting pictures from Fenner and Stradbally of beautiful sunsets, and I'm in my flat in Glasgow. So I'm very jealous. And we were meant to be home for Easter. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. But I am looking forward to coming home and seeing everybody and catching up. Miss them all very, very much.
Listen, Laura, mind yourself. Take care. Dr. Laura Barry.
No problem. Thanks very much, Damien.
It's a pleasure talking to you.
Thanks.
A little chat with Laura there. A text in from Caroline Keane. Well done, Laura, on all your great work. I know Annette and Donal are very proud of you. A text in from Liz as well. A lovely, brilliant interview. Great to hear her voice. Her granny, May Milan, will be proud as punch. Thank you, Damien. Not at all, Liz. It's a pleasure to talk to Laura, and she is doing marvellous, marvellous work. So proud of her. As everybody is proud of all the people working in intensive care in Waterford Hospital, it'd be great to be able to talk to some people in the hospital here in Waterford. We've been on to hospital management to try and arrange that, and it would be great if we could get something like that here, because the great work that's been done in the hospital should well be reflected in good PR. So keep your texts and comments coming in. There's a protest taking place outside City Square at present from some Debenhams workers. We're going to hopefully hear from it next. Now keep your texts and comments coming in. I'm going to go straight to Emer McKeown. Good morning, Emer.
Morning, Damien.
How are you?
Not too bad. Yourself?
Good, thank you. Emer's with our news staff, and you're at City Square in Waterford City at present, outside of there, and there's a protest taking place by staff of Debenhams, some former staff of Debenhams. Tell us what's happening there, please, Emer.
Yes, that's right, Damien. There is about 15 staff members here outside City Square. The sun has just come out. They are maintaining 2 metres between each other. Some are wearing gloves and masks, and they're getting a lot of support from the traffic going by. And there is actually quite a bit of traffic as well.
OK, and just remind people, Debenhams went into liquidation, I think, 10 days ago now, and they announced that their stores in Ireland were to close. And effectively, a lot of the staff, what have they been telling you this morning, Emer?
That's right, Damien. Debenhams announced on April 9th that it's to liquidate its 11 stores, and that's including Waterford store here in City Square Shopping Centre. There is about 90 people employed here in the store, including the concession staff, but in total 2,000 people across the country are going to lose their jobs. The UK owners of the Irish operation say the company is insolvent and can't pay its debts. So some staff have worked here for Debenhams for years, some going back to Rocha stores. They believe that Debenhams deliberately used the pandemic to leave Ireland. They say they weren't consulted about the liquidation, haven't been provided with a redundancy package. They believe that this is totally unfair. There's been no meetings. So they're holding protests outside 7 stores nationwide today, including Waterford. And it's going to be a 1-hour protest until midday. And staff who can't take part are holding virtual solidarity protests online.
Yes. Some of them believe that Debenhams have used this crisis, I suppose, to exacerbate or to speed up the redundancies. And that's one of the main things. What are they hoping to achieve, Emer?
They're hoping that Debenhams might decide to reverse the decision to liquidate and sit down with them. As I said, they've had to apply for the COVID-19 unemployment benefit. This has had a big impact on the mainly female workforce. A lot of them aren't here today because they're at home minding their children. So they feel that this is totally unfair.
Yeah.
And they have worked here for years. I've been speaking to a lady who has worked here for 24 years. And they just feel like they just can't believe that this has happened. There has been talk for years about Debenhams going into administration, but the liquidation has come as a total shock.
Yes. Well, listen, I know you've got news reports to do, so we'll let you go, Emer, and thank you very much for that report, because I think we have Margaret on the line. Emer, mind yourself. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Damien.
Thank you. And one of those women who cannot go to the protest today is on the line now. Margaret, good morning.
Good morning, Damien. How are you?
I'm good. Margaret Sinnott, you spoke to us when Debenhams announced its closure. You were very emotional and very upset. What has happened since, Margaret?
I think there's a lot of anger now. When I was talking to you there the day that we found, like the day after we found out, we were fairly upset. But now it's kind of turned to anger. We're upset about how we've been treated. Debenhams seem to just have washed their hands of us. As far as they're concerned, the government can pay our statutory redundancy, and they seem to just. We feel they've used the COVID-19. Now, we knew they were in trouble, but we didn't think, it was as bad as they're saying. Like, as I said to you there last week, we were in shock, but now anger has come to us all. We're very, very angry at this stage.
Yeah, it's difficult to know how this is going to work out, obviously, Margaret, because, like, you do have to stand up and be counted. You have to. You felt you've had no option but to protest in this limited way. Obviously, as you say, from the protest in terms of social distancing. Are there any channels, any lines of communication open? Like I saw in the papers that the court cases are going ahead. The liquidators have been appointed to Debenhams in Ireland, and Debenhams are basically, I suppose, they're going to say we don't have any money.
I know that the unions at the moment have written to, say, the directors, they've written to the liquidators, they've asked for the last deal that was on the table. Now, we know we probably won't get that, but we have to try. We don't know. We have no information, really. The union are great, I have to say. They're trying to keep us up to date as much as they can. But it's just, I think, with the COVID-19, everything, like, we felt we needed to protest today because it's like everything is shut down, and it was like, well, we feel Debenhams used this. Well, they can't protest. They won't be able to. Like, we're trying to keep it in the news. That was our way today. As we say, we've little information. We're waiting now. We're supposed to receive our notice, our 30-day notice from the liquidators. We're expecting that this week. Everyone is going to get a letter. But other than that, we really know nothing. They have said they will leave us back in to get our personal belongings, but when the COVID-19 is over. So, like, how long is that going to be? We all have personal items in there,
Yeah, so you don't even have your personal belongings?
No, they're all in our lockers. Like, our lockers, a lot of people have money, different things in there. And, like, the liquidator has said he will let us back in. But, like he said, once the COVID-19 epidemic is over, so whenever that is, it's a hard time now. We're all in limbo. As I said to you last week, none of us can meet up. So we're all trying to use phone calls, social media to try and keep in contact with each other. But it's hard. Like, it's just.
Yeah, it is very hard.
I don't know. Yeah. At least if you were in work, like, or if you could go, like, if the union could have a meeting with us and we're all together and explain. Like, in fairness, they're very good. They are explaining everything to us, but they're kind of at a loss. Like, Debenhams is saying they're insolvent and they don't have any money. So basically, like, we're still entitled to our redundancy, like, say, the notice of redundancy pay. We're entitled to holiday money owed. Some of the girls have worked lieu time. They've worked the hours and they haven't been paid for it, So,
there's a lot of issues there, yeah.
Yeah, there is. There's a lot of issues there,
Well,
and, like, we don't want to be quiet about it.
No,
we're trying
you're right.
through social media to keep it out there and keep our fight going. Yeah.
We'll keep in touch, Margaret, and we'll continue to highlight it as much as we can. Listen, you mind yourself, okay?
No worries. Thanks for that.
Thanks, Margaret. Margaret Sinnott there, Debenhams worker, and want to say hello to all the former members of staff. They're up to 90 staff between full-time, part-time and concession staff, as they call them, and their families. And take care and stay safe. And if there's anything we can do to highlight your case on the show, we certainly will. A text in from a Dungarvan listener. I'd like to say well done to GSK in Dungarvan. They donated PPE to Dungarvan Hospital and Carrigalee Corja Services. Good morning. I can't believe it. Last week I got a COVID-19 book in English. Today I got one in Irish. Typical. No stopping the waste of money and paper. Good morning, Damien. People are going on about the hospitals being nearly empty of non-COVID patients. But at the end of the day, that's why that wonderful woman, Laura, speaking on your programme, and her colleagues have the time to sit and console with people who are dying without their family members around them. God bless all healthcare workers in these strange times. That's a very good point, Texter. Very, very good point. Paddy has texted in about empty apartments at Grace Chew, at least 20 to 30 empty apartments. I don't understand the rush in opening up building sites when the City Council won't get their finger out and give these unfinished apartments out to the people. Good morning, Damien. An issue of a Dungarvan listener here. I go for my 2-kilometre walk in Dungarvan every day, and I'm lucky to be afforded that luxury, unlike others of my family who are cocooning. My question is, why are there a lot more cars on the road this week compared to the Easter weekend? We're all supposed to be in lockdown, and where are the guarded checkpoints ensuring that people are adhering to the rules, which, in my opinion, are clearly not being adhered to? I personally watched up to a group of 10 teenagers gathering last evening around the Abbeyside area, particularly around the church area, and surely this is not right. There is a relaxation of the rules and we have to reinforce it, and people need to stick to the rules of social distancing, says Jim. Another texter, when announced the pubs were closing, a lot of publicans stayed open for a little while, but most did close. Another texter saying, I have great sympathy for the publicans and staff. Another texter, it's not the drink, it's the chat, it's the fun. Going to a pub, even for a half an hour after a long week, it's something that keeps us going from one week to the next, says this texter. Another person saying, regarding the HSE and the government and PPE, what happened to the PPE that's come over from China? We saw and we heard it arriving. Some of it wasn't fit for purpose. And a person asking about PPE. And others talking about gloves, protective gloves being thrown in every street in Waterford city and county. We're going to be talking about that tomorrow. Stay with us. Now, in a minute, I'm going to be talking to Michael Doherty from MABS. So if you have any questions, please text me 083 333 975, or you can call Laura on 051 846 123. Here's an important text that was out this morning as well on the Ollie and Mary show regarding the booklets. OK, if you get a booklet in Irish, read it. You might learn a little bit. Because we got a text in from somebody. I read the Irish language version of the COVID-19 booklet from cover to cover. It's an excellent publication. Not a waste, as one of your listeners said last week. And not mad, as you said on your programme yesterday. After all, Irish is our native language. We have a wonderful Gaeltacht here in County Waterford. I love WLR, but I find some of those comments upsetting, offensive and very unfair. You were 100% right, texter. Well done, and thank you very much for texting in that message. Michael Doherty, good morning.
Good morning, Damien. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Regional Manager for North Munster for MABS, Money and Budgeting Service. You want to get an important message out regarding MABS and the fact that ye are open for business.
Yeah, that's correct. I think in the first couple of weeks, I think people maybe felt we weren't open, but we are fully open. We were deemed one of the essential services. All our offices across the region are manned, and we have our experienced staff are actually waiting there to deal with and assist people in dealing with their finances. So that we are open for business, and we will provide the service, the full service, but it will be on a remote basis. So we'll deal with people over the phone or through email, and then using the technology that's available.
And tell me, Michael, what have people been contacting you about in the last 4 weeks in particular?
Yeah, in the last 4 weeks, we certainly have our normal, the clients, the cases that we would have ongoing, and we would have maybe 2,000 of those cases at any given time. What people are contacting us with at the moment is in relation to loss of job and the impact because of COVID-19, and concern about, in particular, say, mortgage payments and all general bill payments. We have, again, people who have had to shut businesses, local businesses, small business, bed and breakfast, concerned about paying rent and how they meet the bills, and as again, all of these businesses that have closed down as a result of COVID-19, and in particular would be concerned of what their entitlements would be. We would also have the clients maybe who, because of the last recession, have alternative mortgage repayments in place with their lender and are concerned that reductions in income because of COVID-19 will impact their ability to maintain those arrangements, and that those people are probably feeling in a particularly vulnerable position because they've had difficulties previously and how that impacts them. We'd have clients, people calling again concerned about rent and how they meet the rent payments with reductions in income because of COVID-19. But it's generally the impact of the loss of income, reduction in income, and how that affects them and how meeting their bills. But also we have people calling to looking for assistance in dealing with their lender when they're maybe seeking the 3-month holiday payment or the break-in payments and mortgage payments and all of that. People are seeking assistance in dealing with their lenders. And
I'll give this out at the end of the item, Michael, but what numbers can people contact you by or via online as well?
Yeah, 0761 07 2050.
Just call that out again.
Yeah, 0761 07 2050. That is the number for Waterford. But again, you can log online and look at MABS.ie and look for the offices that are closest to you, because again, there may be offices in that are more closely aligned to you. But again, now you have a contact number and you will be put in contact with the advisor that will most appropriately deal with your situation.
Would it be safe to say, Michael, that the fact that the government are doing the COVID payments at present, it may have lessened the financial pressure for some people, not for all, but for some people, that it's kind of put up a bit of a barrier on the floodgates, and that when these payments end, and they will end at some stage, in some form, they'll be reduced, you may see a very increase in business, and there could well be a bottleneck then.
Yes, and we are in many respects expecting that. I think the point you make is very valid. For a lot of people, income may be quite similar, or not have reduced too much. In addition, because maybe they're at home, there's savings in terms of getting to and from work and things they would have been doing. So the impact of the shutdown is not being felt at the moment in many cases. And you are correct. Most people will get back to work. But like if they've taken holidays from mortgage payments and all of those payments will have to be made up. All of the utility bills will have to be brought up to date in time. So yes, we are expecting a floodgate, a deluge, if you like, in clients down the road. We would encourage people to come sooner rather than later. We think it's important to plan from everybody's perspective, not just their own, but even from a household perspective. We would certainly be encouraging all members of the public who are in this situation to be trying to maintain payments insofar as they possibly can. And I'd just like to emphasise that MABS is available if they need some assistance in looking at how they prepare in the current situation to try and meet as many of those bills as possible.
Yes. Michael, thank you so much. 0761 07 2050. 0761 07 2050. Michael, thank you and mind yourself.
Thank you.
Michael Doherty there, Regional Manager, North Munster with MABS. Good morning, Damien. Answer to the question regarding the Abbeyside listeners. Where are the Gardaí? Some of them are on Youghal Bridge. 3 cars and 5 Gardaí doing a checkpoint. Good morning, Damien. I definitely think the social distancing issues, there is a slippage, says this man. I was in a supermarket at the weekend, nearly died. A family of 5 coming down the aisle with 3 children. So much for social distancing. Keep your texts and comments coming in. A lot of people talking about the issues we had yesterday regarding 40 years as well since Waterford won the FAI Cup. And the song that won the Eurovision this week. Everybody was playing it 40 years ago this week. Now, in a minute, I'm going to be talking to Aoibhinn Fallon. Some calls that came in regarding illegal dumping, wondering, are the dumps in Waterford charging or are they free, as was said on RT News last night? James phoned in to say 18 months ago, Shane Ross went out of his way regarding the drink driving laws. And basically, James is saying we need to go back to the rules. Pub used to be full a decade ago, even in the last recession. Now you can't even sniff a drink and you're over the limit. Tom has phoned in to say the chauffeur business. I said that earlier. And also the News and Star reporting that there's a confirmed case of COVID-19 in a Waterford nursing home, and our news team will be checking up on that, and you'll have more on that later on today. Dr. Luke O'Neill said last night on Claire Byrne's show, it's okay to bring children shopping at the supermarket. There's no evidence of children spreading the disease, no different to adults. So is this mixed messages we're getting? One from Simon, one from Luke. Any thoughts on this from others? Asked this texter. A person has texted in about the mortgage situation and COVID-19. We'll come back to you on that. We're going to be looking at that tomorrow. Another texter saying that they got the test done on March the 24th and still have no results. I've the Dublin number that I rang, but it's only an answering machine. Anybody out there can help me in this situation? Asked this texter. And a lovely text in from Emily. She's also a Debenhams worker, and she says, I would never have thought that just over a month ago this would happen, and we have to stay together while maintaining our social distance 2 metres apart. Now, Aoibhinn Fallon, good morning.
Good morning, Damien.
How's it going?
Fantastic, yeah, I have to say. I'm getting used to this isolation business, and it is not too bad. It is not too bad. We're very, very lucky where we live here in Waterford, aren't we?
Dunmore in particular?
Yeah, definitely. But I think Waterford in general, it seems that everything's pretty much under control, and I know things are tough for some people and people are getting a bit frustrated, but aren't we lucky if you look at other places in the world?
Tell us about Youthquake. Remind our listeners, please.
OK, so this was a project which we ran last year in 4 schools across Waterford, involving TY students, 15 TY students from each school, where we developed the storylines and the scripts of 5 half-hour radio plays. They went out last April, and it was a very dramatic story, and you had to kind of...
a year ago now already, it is.
Yeah, it is a year ago. And you, it is a series, so you have to listen to all 5 to kind of get the climax of the story. So same project this year. This year we went to the Friary in Dungarvan, Newtown School, Deise and the Ursuline, involving TY students there with myself and Liam Marr, once again, very well known playwright and director here in Waterford, and engaged with the TY students to basically find out what is going on in the lives of teenagers of Waterford, what are the issues, what life is like for them, and we wrote 5 half-hour radio plays once again, and the first one is starting on Tuesday.
How did you learn from the first year in terms of anything that you sort of fine-tuned, anything you worked on it that worked well the first year that may have worked even better the second year?
I think what was great and what we didn't expect the first year was the collaboration between all 4 schools, because we were kind of going into Deise on a Tuesday, let's say, for example, and then we go to the Ursuline on a Wednesday, and we were kind of like, well, they were saying in Deise this. So this year what we tried to do, actually one of the days we got the students from Deise who were taking part to come down to the Ursuline, and we all worked together, which was very interesting, I have to say. And just that whole process of when we came in to record here in the studios. Originally, I had been saying to the students in Dungarvan in the Friary that maybe we could record their parts down in the Dungarvan studios instead of them having to come all the way up here to Waterford. And they said, no, we want to be where the action is. So that whole recording process was a great experience, because you have students from 4 different schools who'd possibly never encountered each other before, all coming together. And in the beginning it was a little bit awkward, and they were all sort of kind of trying to get to know each other, and by the end they just had bonded over the storylines of these 5 characters.
And this was all obviously recorded before?
Yes.
Before
COVID-19. So there isn't a mention of coronavirus in it. And we are talking about the Leaving Cert happening. And we're talking about, I know, and it wasn't that long ago, really, when you think about it, so there's references to longitude. They're all going off to longitude. Is that going to happen? We'll have to wait and see. They're all talking about the Leaving Cert, the Junior Cert. Are they going to happen? So it's coronavirus free. It is coronavirus free. So the storylines are, again, about 5 friends. They're all in a friend group this time, and the dynamics within a friend group. Working with the teenagers, we found that seems to be the kind of the norm, is that people would have a group of friends, and a lot of those group of friends would include male and female. So there are 5 friends, and one of the girls is going away to France as part of TY for a month, and she decides to have a house party. And at said house party, there is drinking, because we asked all the teenagers, and the majority of them said that yes, there would be underage drinking at parties. That's what happens. And there is a fight, and there are rows, and there's heartbreak, and at the very end, there is tragedy. So you'll have to follow the series once again every Tuesday evening at 6:10.
What's your feeling about how things are going? Like, obviously, this is just a different time zone in a way. It'll be a lovely snapshot to look back on, won't it?
I think so as well, because when the lockdown and all of that started, I kind of had it in the back of my head that we weren't going to go ahead with broadcasting these plays. And very, very nicely, Mary O'Neill is hosting the plays on the Fringe programme here on WLR. So it was Mary that emailed me and said, are we still going ahead with these? And I was like, oh, are we? And then I thought, why not? People are at home. They're looking for something entertaining. As you say, it is a snapshot to what life was normal. Like, basically, these plays are... What we try to do is to show what normal life is like for teenagers. Yes, there's drama, and yes, there's tragedy and all of that, because it is a drama. But it's more or less to try and show parents how their teenagers talk to each other. And what they're doing in their spare time, what they like, what they don't like. So it is hopefully a snapshot of teenage life prior to the coronavirus.
Yeah, before COVID and after COVID, that's what it'll be known as in time to come. It'll be like a little history thing in a way. It will. It'll be very, because this is just literally only a few months beforehand. Have you faith in teenagers?
Absolutely. From working with them for the last 2 years, they get a bad rap. And that is one of the main questions that we ask them when we go into the workshops. Liam Marr will always say, do you think teenagers get a bad rap? They always say yes. Liam will say, do you think it is deserved? Some of them will say yes, probably, but not all teenagers are up to no good. You know, teenagers they're smart. They know what's going on. This generation, I have found them engaging, polite. You know, and this project wasn't for everybody. You know, it wasn't for all teenagers. So, you know, there was some that, this isn't for me. That's grand. But anybody that did take part in the process, I feel they got as much out of it as we did. And I have to say, the future of Waterford is in safe hands if these are our future leaders.
When is it going out and people can access it online as well? Yeah,
so it will be broadcast on air here on WLR every Tuesday evening for the next 5 Tuesdays, starting this evening. And it's on the Fringe programme, so it'll go out at around... That programme starts at 6:10, so it'll probably start at around 6:20. And it'll be every Tuesday evening for the next 5 weeks, as I said, and then it will be podcast on our website, WLRFM.com, on the Drive Time page.
Will people be able to get the podcasts as it happens week by week, or will it be... Yes, after...
So if, for example, you miss week 1 and you want to tune in on the Tuesday for week 2, you can listen back to week 1 before you do so. And they're about 24-25 minutes each. So they're short snapshots. None of the actors involved are professional actors. We got a couple of adults to play the adult roles. Again, they would be people that would be experienced actors, but no professionals. These teenagers are not professional actors. Some of them found being in front of a microphone terrifying and completely out of their comfort zone. But they did it. And, you know, you might be listening to it and go, okay, that line didn't really work there or whatever. Just keep in mind that, these are a group of teenagers. These are a group of 16, 17-year-olds that help to write, develop the storyline and acting in these plays.
Aoibhinn, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Now, thank you everybody for all your texts and comments. Thank you very much, Julie, for producing. Jeff is up next. Thanks to Lemur and our news team for the contributions to the programme as well today. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Stay safe. Maintain your social distance.